On Thanksgiving, my quiet success went public. $12 million. My sister's shock erupted into fury as my family ganged up, demanding I give it all to her since she deserved it more. That was when I understood what I truly owed them. Absolutely nothing. Can you imagine building a multi-million-dollar empire, but to your own family, you're still just the other daughter who works at some little antique shop? Well, that was my life. Until one Thanksgiving, when everything spectacularly imploded. And trust me, it was a long time coming. Hi, I'm Sarah, I'm 38, and I genuinely need to get this off my chest. You know those twisted family dynamics where one kid can do no wrong, bathed in attention, while the other just exists? Invisible. Yeah. Welcome to my world. Everything was pretty normal until I was 8. I was an only child, and my parents, while not exactly overflowing with warmth, were present. Mom would help with homework. Dad would occasionally take me fishing. We weren't the Brady Bunch, but we were fine. Then one night, everything shattered. I remember Aunt Kelly showing up at 2 a.m., whispering for me to pack a suitcase. Mom was in the hospital. My sister Rachel was on her way, 2 months too early. The next few weeks were a blur of hushed conversations, hospital visits, and a sickening feeling I couldn't quite name. Rachel was tiny, like one of my baby dolls, but tangled in all these tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to touch her, couldn't even get too close. That's when I felt it for the first time, an invisible wall, slowly, agonizingly, forming between me and the rest of my family. When they finally brought Rachel home, our house became a sterilized bubble. Mom developed this obsession with germs. I'm talking industrial-strength disinfectant everywhere. Hand sanitizer stations in every single room. Constant, relentless cleaning. Honestly, the harsh smell of bleach still makes my stomach clench today. But here's the part that really messed me up, the true turning point. Anytime I showed the slightest symptom of illness, I was whisked away. Sneeze once. Pack your bags, you're off to Grandma Marie's. A mild cough? See ya, Aunt Kelly's. At first, I thought it was fun. Grandma Marie made the best cookies, and Aunt Kelly had an incredible collection of Nancy Drew books. But kids aren't stupid, not really. After a while, you start to understand what's truly happening. You're not being sent on adventures. You're being treated like a threat, like your very existence, your sniffles, your childhood germs, could somehow harm the precious Rachel. I tried everything to get their attention in a healthier way. Honestly, everything. I got all A's. Mom would barely look up from Rachel's latest doctor's appointment calendar. I won first prize in the science fair with a project on renewable energy. Dad just asked if I could store the display board in the garage because Rachel was allergic to cardboard dust. Is that even a thing? The real kicker came when I was 12. 4 months. I'd been practicing for the school talent show, teaching myself to play bridge over troubled water on the piano. Yeah, a little too on the nose, I know. The night of the show, Rachel had a 99.1 degree fever. Guess who had no one? Absolutely no one in the audience. Meanwhile, 2 weeks later, the entire family, both sets of grandparents included, showed up for Rachel's 15-minute flute recital where she essentially murdered hot cross buns. Rachel, bless her manipulative heart, quickly learned to play the system. By age 7, she'd outgrown any real health issues. But that didn't stop her. Headache. Must stay home from school. Feeling tired? Someone else should do her chores. Worried about a test? Mom would literally call the school to get the deadline extended. I started spending more and more time in my room, lost in books about art history, about antiques. It's funny how life works out sometimes. My room became my sanctuary, mostly because Rachel claimed she was allergic to my lavender air freshener. So, it was the one place she wouldn't go. Do you know what's truly messed up? When she pretended to be sick, a part of me felt grateful. At least I'd be sent to Grandma Marie's, where someone would actually ask about my day, or be interested in what I was reading. Grandma was actually the one who sparked my interest in vintage jewelry. She had this incredible collection of costume pieces that she let me organize and catalog. I suppose I should have seen it as prophetic. The worst part wasn't even the clear favoritism. It was how they rewrote history to excuse their actions. Rachel just needs more attention because she had such a rough start. Sarah's always been so independent. Sarah understands her sister has special needs. No, I didn't understand. I was a child who couldn't comprehend why having a good immune system made me less deserving of love. Looking back, I can see how those years shaped me. That persistent, insidious message that I was somehow unsafe or inconvenient, it doesn't just go away. But hey, at least it taught me to be self-sufficient. When no one checks your homework or cares about your triumphs, you quickly learn to be your own cheerleader. High school. Most people either loved it or hated it. Me. I saw it as a ticket out. While Rachel was establishing her drama empire in middle school, I was laying the groundwork for my escape. And let me tell you, nothing inspires you to achieve more than knowing no one will do it for you. Remember how I spent hours sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry collection? That taught me a valuable lesson, the need for systematic organization and attention to detail. In high school, I approached everything with that same perspective. My desk at home looked like something out of an organization magazine. Color-coded notes, meticulously organized study plans, everything in its place. Rachel teased me about it, calling me Rainman. Very clever, sis. But here's the thing about being invisible. No one's monitoring your failures or successes. So, you can do whatever the heck you want. I joined every club that didn't interfere with my part-time job at Carson's Diner. Shout out to Carol, the owner, for remembering my birthday when my own parents had forgotten. Debate team. Check. National Honor Society president. Check. Editor-in-chief of the school newspaper. Check. The debate team was where I truly found my voice. There's something so rewarding about shattering someone's argument while maintaining complete composure. It also taught me how to negotiate, which I didn't realize at the time, but would become incredibly useful later. I even won states twice. My parents couldn't attend either competition because Rachel had major soccer games. She was on the C team, by the way. Did not even play. Junior year was when things truly became interesting. I took the SATs and got a flawless score. Not like, oh, pretty good. Flawless. I mean perfect. 1600, do you know how few people get that? Less than 1%. I remember staring at the results screen, heart pounding, for almost 20 minutes. Convinced it was an error, I rushed home to tell my parents, knowing this was stupid, but I had to try. Mom was in the kitchen, helping Rachel with her English homework. Mom, look! I got a perfect SAT score. That's nice, honey, but can you keep it down? Rachel's trying to concentrate. She has a big test tomorrow. Rachel chimed in. Yeah, some of us actually have to study Miss Perfect. Rachel, sweetie, don't stress. You're just a different kind of learner, Mom said, dismissing my triumph. I still have a hard copy of those SAT results somewhere. Never got pinned on the fridge. But Rachel's C+ in English? That infant received primo refrigerator real estate, complete with a "we're so proud of you" magnet. College applications. That process was wild. I applied to 15 schools without telling anyone. I wrote all my own essays, gathered my own recommendations, handled all the financial aid paperwork myself. My guidance counselor, Mr. Chun, was the true MVP. My parents were too busy to help with the FAFSA, so I stayed late after school with him, night after night. Then the acceptances started rolling in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan. And each one came with a scholarship offer. I stored them all in a locked box under my bed, knowing exactly what would happen if Rachel discovered them. Their focus would suddenly shift entirely to her. But if Sarah goes to Harvard, I'll be all alone. Or some other nonsense like that. The day I got my full ride offer from U of M, Rachel joined JV cheerleading. Guess which one was celebrated with a family feast? Hint, I had microwave mac and cheese in my room while they went to Olive Garden. But you know what? That scholarship was my golden ticket. Tuition, room, and board, all included, plus a book allowance. I could finally leave that house, that place where I was either invisible or inconvenient. The day I got my acceptance package, I went to my favorite spot in the local library, a fourth-floor window seat overlooking the park, and I cried for an hour. Not sad tears. Those were tears of relief. When I told my parents at supper that I was going to U of M, they were, well, less than thrilled. Michigan? But that's so far. What if Rachel needs you? Mom replied, I hope you're not expecting us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions are very costly. Rachel, meanwhile, started crying. Oh my God, finally! Can I have your room? I need space for my TikTok videos. That summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's diner to save money. Carol, bless her heart, always gave me extra tips and made sure I got to take home leftover pie at the end of my shifts. She also taught me a vital skill, how to spot genuine people in a world full of fakes. Baby, she'd tell me, in diners and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the least to say. Move-in day at U of M. My folks couldn't make it because, surprise, Rachel had a cheerleading competition. Aunt Kelly drove me instead, helped me set up my dorm room, and handed me a $500 envelope. Your Grandma Marie wanted you to have this, she told me. She's so proud of you. Later, I learned Grandma had been saving that money from her Social Security checks for months. That first night in my dorm room, I promised myself I was going to create such a wonderful life that being overlooked would be inconceivable. Not for vengeance. Nothing to prove to my family. But for that 8-year-old girl who used to get sent to Grandma's house for sneezing. College flew by in a flurry of all-nighters, instant ramen, and heavenly independence. I graduated summa cum laude from the University of Michigan. Not that my folks noticed. They were too busy helping Rachel transfer to her third college in 2 years. But this is where the plot takes an unexpected turn. I got an entry-level job at Everett and Phillips, an auction house in Detroit. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the business, you probably know who I'm talking about. A genuine high-end establishment, many old money clients, that type of transaction. I started with their estate sales business, which involved documenting the belongings of wealthy individuals after their deaths. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid the bills. My first few months were pretty standard, logging countless china sets, categorizing vintage furniture, and so on. Then came the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow who had died with no children, leaving behind what everyone assumed was a huge collection of costume jewelry. Rooms filled with the stuff. This is where those hours at Grandma Marie's came in useful. I'm sifting through this mountain of jewelry when something catches my eye. An Art Deco brooch. Nothing really showy, but something about it felt different. The weight was wrong for costume jewelry. The clasping mechanism was far too complex for a copycat. I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching old jewelry markers and signatures. I ended up staying late at the office to use the company's membership to several antique jewelry databases. The more I looked, the more certain I became. This was not costume jewelry. This was the real stuff. Problem was, I was the new girl. Nobody would believe me if I just claimed we had a potential treasure on our hands. So, I did what the debate team taught me. I meticulously prepared my argument. I spent 2 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything I could about Art Deco jewelry authentication. I even used some of my pitiful excuse for savings to pay for an online gemology course. Finally, I mustered the guts to approach my boss, Mr. Harrison. I brought the whole presentation, complete with comparative images, historical documentation, the works. Sir, I think we might have something significant in the Kingston collection. Harrison, barely looking up from his phone, mumbled, Sarah, we've already cataloged those as costume pieces. You are correct, I know, but look at these maker marks. They match perfectly with Cartier's 1925 signatures. Harrison finally looked up, really paying attention now. Where did you learn all of this? My reply, I did some research. Long story short, that costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. Turns out it was part of a limited collection created for some European royalty in the 1920s. But here's the real kicker. Harrison started to trust me after that. He began giving me other artifacts to authenticate. Suddenly, my pointless pastime of sorting antique jewels acquired real significance. I devoted myself to learning everything I could about vintage jewelry. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales, researching items. I even started a small notebook to document various authentication procedures. My apartment looked like a jewelry scholar's fever dream, with walls covered in printouts of vintage hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house started getting results. I was discovering important items others had overlooked, developing contacts with collectors, and truly understanding the market. My commission checks became larger. For the first time in my life, I was not simply surviving. I was actually saving money. My family, though, still remarkably uninterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still went to like a fool, the discourse usually went like this: Mom, Sarah's still at that antique shop, right? Me, auction house, actually. And yes, I just authenticated a rare Tiffany piece. Rachel would interrupt. Oh my God, speaking of jewelry, you guys have to see this charm bracelet I bought at the mall. But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had discovered something wholly mine. Something I was actually excellent at. Something completely unrelated to being Rachel's sister. Then came the Rothschild collection. This was about 2 years into my employment at the auction house. A massive estate, old money family. There was a lot of buzz in the industry. I was part of the team that cataloged their jewelry collection, and that's when I noticed it. A fairly commonplace Art Nouveau piece that everyone else had missed. I spent 3 days researching it. I barely slept. It turned out to be a piece from a famous French jeweler's private collection, which was supposed to have been lost during World War II. When it sold at auction for $238,000, Harrison called me into his office. I thought I was getting a promotion. Instead, he said something that completely changed everything. Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business. Initially, I shrugged it off. Me start a business? With what money? However, the notion took root. I began doing modest freelance authentication projects on the side. Word spread that I had a terrific eye. Private collectors started contacting me directly. One night, I was sitting in my modest apartment, surrounded by jewelry manuals and authentication tools I'd gradually accumulated, when I had an epiphany. This is something I could actually do. I could build something on my own. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a large debt against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a small office space in a less desirable area of town. People thought I was insane. Perhaps I was. I transformed a storage room above a Chinese restaurant that was about the size of a college dorm room. The rent was low because it always smelled like Kung Pao chicken. And the Wi-Fi only functioned if you sat in the corner by the window. But it was mine. The first few months were interesting. And by interesting, I mean terrifying. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. with cold sweats, calculating how many months until my savings ran out. Loan payments felt like a rope around my neck. My office furnishings consisted of a card table I bought from Goodwill and a chair I literally found on the curb. Don't worry, it was thoroughly cleaned. However, in the world of high-end jewelry, reputation and contacts are everything, and my experience at the auction house provided me with both. I started small, doing authentication work for local antique dealers. My fees were lower than the larger organizations, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months later, a watershed moment occurred. A dealer I had worked with at the auction house inquired about a collection of Victorian-era brooches. The owner requested confirmation before selling it. It turned out to be a massive collection with pieces from 3 generations of families. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, rarely sleeping, documenting everything. I discovered 2 extremely rare pieces that had been misinterpreted as later replicas. The owner was so delighted with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee but also offered me a 10% commission when the collection sold. That commission, $86,000. More money than I had earned in the preceding 2 years combined. Suddenly, my phone started ringing. A lot. Private collectors had heard about my knack for finding missed pieces. Estate lawyers sought advice on inherited jewelry. Even my previous auction house began sending me authentication work. I'm pretty sure Harrison was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jenny, a fresh gemology graduate who reminded me a little too much of myself at that age. She was incredibly intelligent, but often overlooked because she was quiet. She's now my head of authentication and is worth her weight in gold. The firm expanded quicker than I could have predicted. We moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, Kung Pao chicken odor. We built a team of specialists. I earned a reputation for finding those misplaced items. You wouldn't believe how many important historical jewelry items get misinterpreted as costume jewelry in people's attics. However, success came with its own set of obstacles. The bigger we became, the harder it became to keep it a secret from my family. They still thought I worked in an antique shop. Rachel would make these sarcastic remarks during family dinners. Rachel, Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop would want it. Me, having just authenticated a $1.2 million Faberge item that morning, would just smile and say, "Sure, I'll take a look." Mom would continue to introduce me to everyone as, "This is my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something." Meanwhile, I was being quoted in Forbes, luckily under my company name, and we had recently opened our third office. What's strange about it? Keeping the secret became almost enjoyable, like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my Target discount outfit, actually Chanel, listening to Rachel speak about her entry-level marketing job, knowing I just closed a deal for more than her annual income. I even started playing tiny games with myself, such as wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings and seeing whether anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her expensive $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe that cost more than her car. However, the real challenge was managing growth. By year 5, we'd established offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We built a reputation for discretion. It turns out that many wealthy people want their jewels verified without the rest of the world knowing. The money was enormous. For example, we needed to hire a large team of financial advisors. Nonetheless, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I purchased a nice but not flashy house in a desirable neighborhood. I drove a high-end but not obvious car. The only place I truly splurged? My home office, advanced authentication equipment, the most effective security system money can buy, and a custom-built vault to make Fort Knox envious. What's with the irony? They believed I was being frugal to help them. Mom would remark things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help out. She must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I had just validated a collection which earned me a commission greater than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you have, the more difficult it is to explain to others who have always perceived you as inferior. It's like explaining color to someone who has only seen black and white. They lack the necessary context. But by this stage, my company was doing really well. We had the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication industry cornered, and our reputation was solid gold, pun intended. But every Sunday, I'd still travel to my parents' house for dinner, playing Sarah, the modest antique shop worker. The cognitive dissonance was becoming ludicrous. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai collectors, my afternoons authenticating million-dollar pieces, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully chosen normal clothes, eating Mom's overcooked pot roast while Rachel dominated the conversation with stories about her latest marketing triumph. Usually something like bringing her boss's coffee without spilling it. One Sunday is very memorable in my mind. I had just completed a huge transaction, authenticating a missing Cartier piece that had been resting in someone's safe deposit box for 40 years. The commission alone, 7 figures. I drove directly from the meeting to my parents' place, still euphoric from the successful authentication. "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." "Oh, trying to save money," I said, wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater that I had purposefully chosen for its subtle appearance. Rachel chimed in, "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." Mom began, "Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I almost choked on my pot roast, trying not to laugh. The anonymous transfers. Monthly payments to my parents began about this time. Aunt Kelly had quietly informed me that they were struggling to pay Rachel's student loans and medical bills. Mom casually mentioned that they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So, I initiated an anonymous monthly transfer of $5,000 to their account. When asked, I said I was giving $1,000 by living on rice and beans. They assumed the rest came from Aunt Kelly or another family member. Rachel, of course, claimed responsibility for inspiring family members to help. The money was helpful, but it also had unexpected consequences. My parents began treating me with a strange combination of sorrow and patronizing pride, as if I were some kind of noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending became more extravagant. She'd arrive for dinner with new expensive bags, claiming they were outlet finds. They weren't. I can recognize a genuine Gucci at 20 paces. She began taking extravagant vacations, bragging on Instagram about her fortunate life. I'm pretty sure she used my support money for shopping sprees. However, I remained silent. The irony was simply wonderful. Then came the college fun drama. Rachel declared that she wanted to return to school for her MBA. Another private university, of course. Only the best for the golden child. Mom called me in tears, explaining how they couldn't afford it. Maybe Rachel could look at state schools. I suggested. They have good programs too. Oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But speaking of assisting, may I increase my monthly contribution for a few years? I increased it to $7,000 per month. My accounts were unaffected, but witnessing them compliment Rachel for taking initiative with her education while presuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The actual kicker? I was giving a guest seminar at the same business school Rachel wanted to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to give a lecture on luxury, goods authenticity, and business growth. I had to come up with an excuse as to why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. My own achievements started to feel like a distinct, separate life, as if I were some kind of corporate superhero with a hidden identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar authentication business. By night, well, on Sunday evenings, I was just Sarah, the disappointed daughter who worked at an antique shop. The weight of the untruth was becoming heavier. Rachel made snide remarks about my career on multiple occasions. Each time, Mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle. Every time, Dad suggested I get a real job. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly on Thanksgiving. It began 2 weeks before the holiday. Mom called, weeping about her back discomfort. She had been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the notion of cooking Thanksgiving dinner for 20 guests overwhelmed her. Now, I'd like to tell you that I offered to help purely out of goodwill, but really, I'd gotten tired of pretending her dried-out turkey was appetizing. Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer. Don't worry about the cost. I've been saving up. You're not taking out a loan, are you? Mom asked, concerned. I coordinated everything with a high-end catering firm that I use for business gatherings. They do incredible work. The kind of food that makes you wonder why you ever bothered to cook yourself. It cost more than my folks thought I earned in 2 months, but whatever. Thanksgiving morning dawned, and I was feeling pretty good. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major online auction in Hong Kong. This magnificent Art Nouveau necklace was for sale, and I had a customer interested in authentication if they won the bid. The lunch arrived on schedule, and everything was perfectly prepared. Rachel, of course, had to comment. Store-bought stuffing? Really, Sarah? Mom's is so much better. This from the girl who once set off the smoke alarm making toast. Mom was apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Rachel shut up after tasting the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which, by the way, cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away from supper and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting intriguing, and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Rachel's room had undergone 3 renovations. That's when everything went wrong. I had left my authentication program running with many tabs open that displayed various accounts and current agreements. Rachel came in without knocking. Something's never changed, I guess. To borrow my phone charger. She saw my laptop screen, and that's when she realized this was her chance to finally expose how pathetic her older sister was. Rachel, smirking. Let's show everyone what Sarah's really been up to on Thanksgiving. Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and marched into the dining room. Picture this. 20 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents. Stomachs full of gourmet turkey and half drunk on pricey wine, which they mistook for Trader Joe's. Rachel's big announcement. Time to see what kind of important work Sarah is doing on Thanksgiving. She flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to disgrace me with whatever minor antique transactions she assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. You could hear the fancy clock I got Mom for Christmas ticking quietly. She believed it was a reproduction. My screen displayed Current account balance: $12,400,000 pending authentication contract, $485,000 recent transaction, $1,200,000 company's quarterly profit report, $4,200,000. Rachel's face shifted through 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between astonishment and nausea. She actually swayed slightly on her feet. This cannot be right. Rachel whispered. Rachel, honey, what is it? Mom asked. Rachel, voice cracking, stammered. She's rich. Sarah's rich. Chaos ensued. If it was possible, the hush deepened even further. Then Mom started giggling. Like, really laughing. Don't be silly. Sarah works at that little antique shop. I rose up, carefully straightening out my admittedly expensive cashmere sweater. Yes, actually, Mom. I own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. For years. Those antique shop comments. I authenticate pieces worth millions. That little business you never asked about? It has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his liquor. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. Uncle began coughing terribly. Then Mom's laughter transformed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so quickly that her chair tumbled over. You have millions! Mom screamed. And you let us struggle. Struggle, I retorted, finally unleashing years of suppressed anger. I send you $7,000 every month, while sitting on millions. Your sister has student loans. So there it was. Instead of congratulations or wow, we're so proud, it was just outrage that I hadn't given them more money. Rachel started to cry, surprising, I know, sobbing about how she deserved to know and how I had betrayed the family. Dad joined in. How could you be so selfish, Sarah? We're your parents. We raised you. That was when I truly lost it. Years of being disregarded. Years of dismissal. Years of being considered a family disappointment. Everything poured forth. Raised me. You shipped me off to Grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved a penny for my college, but took out loans for her private school. And now you're mad that I built something for myself. The following 5 minutes were chaotic. Mom screamed about family obligations. Dad yelled about ungrateful children. Rachel alternated between sobbing and demanding to know just how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team attempted to serve dessert while seeming exceedingly uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously complimented as a nice replica, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom already discussing how to spend my money. Something about Rachel's MBA and a new car. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition BMW, my phone started filling up with texts. The family group chat exploded. Rachel even began posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a cyclone hit in slow motion, except the hurricane represented my family, and the debris symbolized my sanity. Let's start with the messages. Within an hour of leaving supper, my phone had 47 missed calls and over 200 messages. Mom's went through an interesting progression. 7:42 p.m. How dare you walk out on family? 8:15 p.m. We need to talk about this like adults. 9:03 p.m. Your sister deserves a share of your success. 10:30 p.m. I've already called a realtor about houses in better neighborhoods. 11:45 p.m. Why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Rachel, on the other hand, fully embraced social media. She wrote an enormous rant on Facebook about how her millionaire sister had been hoarding wealth while watching her beloved family struggle. The comments section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But this is the part that really got me. Rachel actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Sarah's career, giving her advice about moving up from that little antique shop, and she was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurt so much. I nearly threw my phone across the room. The only career advice she ever gave me was suggesting I try selling jewelry on Etsy. Then came the flying monkeys. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it's when toxic family members send others to guilt trip you. Aunt Susan, whom I saw maybe once every 3 years, called to inform me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still believes I'm 12, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's wife's sister, how did she even get my number, felt compelled to express her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they arrived at my workplace. I walked in on Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Rachel sitting in our reception area. They informed Jenny, my receptionist, that they had an appointment for authentication services. Rachel clutched her Michael Kors bag as if it was genuinely worth something. The conversation went about as well as one would expect. Mom, we've discussed it as a family. Me? A family discussion without the family member you're discussing. Mom, ignoring me, and we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. Rachel chimed in. I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly. Dad added, and your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Me? Did you miss the part where I've been sending you $7,000 monthly? Rachel, that's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. Me? I owe you for what exactly? The years of being ignored, the missed graduations, the constant comparisons. Mom, don't be dramatic. Sarah, we gave you everything. Me? No. I gave myself everything. And you know what? I'm done. Right there, in my own office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped as if I'd slapped her. Rachel began her phony crying performance, but quickly stopped when she saw it wasn't working. Then things became ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Seeing my 60-year-old mother being dragged out, yelling about ungrateful children was bizarre. Jenny asked whether I wanted to press charges. I said no. However, I did have their names placed on the building's do not admit list. The harassment lasted for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses, even trying to contact me through my company's customer service. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandma Marie. But here's the thing about Grandma Marie. She is wiser than all of them put together. How did she respond? Good for Sarah. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak with her for 2 months after that. It has been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I've relocated to a new home with better security. I've changed all my numbers, and the company, we're doing better than ever. It turns out that my family problems actually attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion in the circumstances. Rachel continues to write passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. According to what I've heard, she's actually starting her own jewelry authentication firm. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer wrote them an official letter outlining how harassment charges would affect their lives. They're now telling everyone that they never wanted my money anyway and that they're praying for my salvation. But you know what the best part is? For the first time in my life, I feel truly liberated. No more Sunday dinners full of sly insults. No more downplaying my accomplishments to spare their feelings. No longer financing the Rachel show. My therapist believes I am finally establishing healthy boundaries. I say I am finally living authentically. So that's my story. Thanks for letting me share it. I've told you what I did, but I wonder, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand with family like this? Tell me what you think. I really want to know. And just one last thing for Rachel, because I know you're probably reading this. That Cartier bracelet you're wearing in your most recent Instagram post? Definitely a fake.